saying things like a grace over a meal or our bedtime prayers when we're children. And there's the prayers that we say often, like the Lord's Prayer, which is very alive in basically every Christian gathering, that across theological differences, we come back to this kind of central prayer. But when it comes to a life of prayer or a life in relationship with God, sometimes it's a little bit harder to come by. And I know this honestly, because the only B I got in seminary was in a 2-credit praxis class called Life of Prayer. And they were right. My first quarter of seminary, I hadn't really come back to church yet, but I knew I wanted to be a spiritual caregiver. And the icebreaker question was, what's your favorite spiritual practice? And I'm like, what do you mean? I had no idea what counted as a spiritual practice. And even I understood religion, but I didn't necessarily understand spirituality at the time. And the two things are related, but they are not the same. We have religious practice, we have rituals that gather us together, things like baptism and communion, and again, the Lord's Prayer, these things that are central to Christianity across time. And also, when it comes to prayer, at least in my growing up, when I asked, how do you even do that? No one really had an answer for me. But I come from the Lutherans, and the Lutherans really don't like works righteousness, and what that translates to is like, we can't tell you what to do. And then I came to the Congregationalists, whose whole thing is, we won't tell you what to do. And so what we're lacking then is some guidance, some instruction. How do we actually bring our faith into our daily life? And in kind of spiritual and religious circles, if you've heard people talking, especially about this moment in history, they say things like, you have to stay grounded. But they don't give any practical how to do that. That there's this understanding that there's a lot of chaos in the world. There's a lot of things that cause a lot of fear. There is a sense of overwhelm. And they want us to stay close to ourself, close to our integrity, close to each other, close to God. But there aren't actually tools, or they're harder to come by. And everything feels really overwhelming. Who knows the phrase, the dark night of the soul? Okay, some folks. Okay, so we know that at a time of crisis, right, we're having a dark night of the soul, when everything we think we know is falling apart. Do you know what the second half of that phrase is? Did you know that there's a second half? No, we pulled out the chaos and trauma part, and we're like, yeah, we'll hang on to that. But the second half of it is, bright flows the river of God. Right? So we collectively are in a dark night of the soul. I think that is fair to say. But we miss the gospel of that second part, that God is still present and is actually shining brightly. Bright flows the river of God, which gives the name for this sermon series, Entering the River, Spiritual Practices for Times of Chaos. And the first one that we're starting with is the one that we always carry with us. We might have conversations of working with scripture in a particular way, or working with images in a particular way, or maybe prayer beads. There's a series that we're going to go through, but your breath, as long as you are alive, is something that you carry with you, that you can come into conscious contact with. And it is the thing that even in moments of intense personal chaos, where everything feels really overwhelming, if we can return to our breath, we can find a little bit of space, a little bit of possibility that wasn't there before. We can come back into relationship with our body and figure out how to take one more step. So the first invitation I have is simple but not easy. I'll say deceptively deceptively simple, but not an easy practice. And that is, you are going to count your breaths. In and out counts as 1. And you're going to count to 4. So 4 breaths. And then you're going to go back to 1. So almost like a 4/4 music measure, right? Where a breath in and out is 1. In and out is 2. In and out is 3. In and out is 4. And then back to 1. So we're going to do that for a few minutes. And if you lose track, or if you count further than 4, that's okay. Just come back to 1 and start again. going to invite you to finish your round of 4, and then gently come back to this space when you're complete. How was that? Relaxing. Repetitive. A little bit uncomfortable. Yeah, how long do you think we were going for? An hour. Yeah, it was 4.5 minutes. Yeah, it's a lot of silence in a big room, right? How else was it? What else were our experiences? Still had some mind wandering. Yeah, definitely. The mind is a powerful tool, and thank God, right? It's thinking. It's what it's meant to do, right? Like, that's just part of it. How else was it? Needed. I'm tired. Okay, yes. Just a little bit of time to just drop back into your body and just be present and still for a second and let your mind just take a break.
I realized that I could keep the count and my mind wandered both.
I could keep the count and my mind wandered both. Yeah, happening on a lot of levels then. Yeah. Thankful I could breathe, right? Yeah, definitely. Especially up here where there's not as much oxygen as there is in other places in the country. Other thoughts? So I was in a workshop yesterday morning put on by the Contemplative Outreach of Colorado, and they had this quotation from Father Richard Rohr, a contemplative activist teacher in the Catholic tradition, the founder of the Center for Action and Contemplation. And one of the things he said, or this quotation said, was, "We do not use faith to escape difficulty, but rather to see difficulty all the way through to the end." So there is this sense that sometimes if we're meditating or we're praying, we're trying to not feel some of the negative things that we are carrying in our bodies, right? Like our anxiety, our fear, our anger, right? But sometimes these things do pop back up. And then we use, if you've ever laid concrete or paving stones or something, there's this thing called a tamper. And we use meditation to just tamp it down, right? Just to make it flat. I don't want to feel that. But in times of chaos, those feelings are always going to be there, right? And spiritual practice doesn't get us out of them. What it allows us to do is stay present to them. Because there's this thing called hypernormalization, where we are watching what experts are calling a polycrisis, right? There is a crisis everywhere you look. And being able to stay present and to stay soft and open-hearted and live into our values becomes really, really hard. Because it's just so overwhelming. How can we stay present? How can we be this heartbroken? How can we watch the things that we are watching happen? The ongoing genocide in Gaza. 2 incidents of gun violence here. One in Evergreen, Colorado, and one in Utah, where a video circulated. Pictures are circulating around social media. It is hard to stay present to all of the horror that is here and everything it brings up. And so we hide in routine, right? There's a part of us that just wants to pretend everything is fine, right? That we don't that things aren't actually falling apart, but they are. Everywhere we look, there is not one person that I know who has not been impacted just in the last 8 months in this change in leadership in our country. right? There is not one part of our life that is not impacted by it. But we're still trying so hard. Our brains are trying so hard. Our souls are trying so hard to hang on to it feeling normal when none of this is normal. So in times of chaos, we can return to a spiritual practice to be present to what is. And present to what is doesn't mean all of the bad stuff. It's partly the bad stuff, but it is also present to beauty and wonder and joy and the things that connect us to one another and the relationships that are sustaining to us and everything that remains possible even when everything is falling apart. Spiritual practice helps us be here now, to soften, to open, to choose one another, to choose a future that we keep working toward. And theologically speaking, the Spirit is always wanting to move through us. And prayer is the act of opening ourselves to how the Spirit is moving. If we are going through our life head down trying to check off our to-do list, and we're not taking time to breathe, to tap into our own spirits, to our own intuition, to the way that God is moving in our midst, to the connections that are possible, we miss out on co-creating the world that could be alongside God. And so now, when everything is so overwhelming, it's actually even more important that we have the tools to connect with God and to connect with one another and to connect to that part of ourselves that bears the image of God, because not one human doesn't. And so our next slide, if you would bring it up, please, is what's called a breath prayer. And there's this woman named Cole Arthur Riley who writes an amazing set of resources called Black Liturgies. And it is a set of resources that is deeply in touch with the present moment, the ways that marginalized communities are being targeted, the horrors that we are seeing. And she writes these breath prayers, and she puts them out most days. And on your inhale, this is one that she wrote, saying either in your mind or whispering aloud, "However constant the cruelty, exhale, I resist adaptation." We do not have to normalize the things that are going on, that we can be present, even when it's painful. So we're going to spend some more time in breath prayer. So on your inhale, however constant the cruelty, exhale, I resist adaptation. How did that practice feel? A little easier to have something linguistic to focus on rather than just numbers. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A good reminder not to give in and give up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a solidarity in it, right? So it comes out of Cole Arthur Riley as a Black person, and also there's a solidarity. You know, there's cruelty to lots of different people, and we can still we can all remember not to adapt to it, and specifically through a queer lens. Other thoughts? oftentimes when there are horrors writ broad, something that people with a lot of power often say is thoughts and prayers. Exactly. Right? And there's the incensed part of us that says, well, you could actually do something about it. And we throw away that sentiment for good reason, right? When someone has the institutional power that they are, not doing anything to stop the things that they are ostensibly thinking and praying about. But what we've done is we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. We think that prayer doesn't matter. And yet, there is a whole set of resources. This is just one dock point, I'll say, on one part of the river that connects us to one another and connects us to God, because the things that are so deeply painful in this world are the things that that take from us the inherent knowledge of our connection to one another and our connection to God. Anytime we treat someone as less than, anytime people are persecuted for their identities, anything like that, it is a disruption in our connection, and it is connection that is going to help us survive what is coming. Connection to God, connection to one another. And so prayer actually is a pretty amazing tool that we have. But we do ourselves a disservice by throwing that particular baby out with the bathwater. And so this next several weeks, if this prayer practice was not for you, that's okay. We're going to have different ones that will appeal to different types of people. But this is just one dock as we enter the river of God that is flowing brightly through this collective dark night of the soul that we are experiencing. And so I'm excited to share the things that I've learned, that we can learn together and practice, so that we can align ourselves for the co-creation of what the Spirit is doing in our midst, what is ours to do in this moment to alleviate the suffering of the world. Amen.